seriously injured. It was a horrifying moment in American history. The horror was exceeded only by the bravery of the law enforcement agents who threw themselves in harm's way when shots were fired. The bravery of a crowd unwavering in its refusal to panic, and the bravery of a bloody President Trump refusing to run. While we give overwhelming thanks to the individual Secret Service agents who did their jobs under immense pressure, this tragedy was preventable. The Secret Service's protective mission is to protect U.S. and visiting world leaders and safeguard U.S. elections through protection of candidates and nominees. The Secret Service has a zero-fail mission, but it failed on July 13th. And the Secret Service has thousands of employees and a significant budget, but it has now become the face of incompetence. The committee has a long track record of providing oversight of the Secret Service. Our predecessors, both Jason Chaffetz and Elijah Cummings, among others, worked together to issue warnings and recommendations to address obvious shortcomings in the agency's makeup and operations. Unfortunately, those warnings and recommendations have gone unheeded. A former president and current candidate for president was shot in the head by a sniper within 500 feet of the podium. This is unacceptable, and we are concerned the Secret Service lacks the proper management to keep protectees safe from bad actors. Americans demand answers, but they have not been getting them from the Secret Service. We are in sticks about the events surrounding the attempted assassination every day from whistleblowers and leaks. Americans demand accountability, but no one is yet to be fired for this historic failure. Today's witness, Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheatle, is here under subpoena to answer questions about how the agency failed President Trump and the victims who attended the rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. It is my firm belief, Director Cheatle, that you should resign. However, in complete defiance, Director Cheatle has maintained she will not tender her resignation. Therefore, she will answer questions today from members of this committee seeking to provide clarity to the American people about how these events were allowed to transpire. We will ask these questions because the Secret Service and its parent agency, the Department of Homeland Security, have been unwilling to provide answers to the Americans. Sought to push this hearing to a different time. Secret Service has suggested the hearing occur without media presence, and both agencies have provided only shallow explanations to Congress about what happened on July 13th. Indeed, DHS and Secret Service's lack of communication with the Oversight Committee required me to issue a subpoena compelling Director Cheatle to attend today, and still DHS requested more time to prepare. It shouldn't take this much time or preparation, Director Cheatle, to tell the truth and to be transparent with the American people. I am thankful to the ranking member, Mr. Raskin, for joining me in insisting that Director Cheatle appear today. God knows the ranking member and I disagree on many things, but that does not matter today. The safety of Secret Service protectees is not based on their political affiliation, and the bottom line is that under Director Cheatle's leadership, we is safe. Not President Biden, not the First Lady, not the White House, and certainly not the presidential candidates. The July 13th assassination attempt is one of the darkest days in American political history. It represents the ugliest parts of what American politics has become: hatred of each other and a dangerous turn to extremism. Before we were Republicans or Democrats, we are Americans. If we place our political affiliations above our duty and love of country, we cannot maintain a country. We must ensure our republic is strong, and our republic cannot be strong when our leadership, our elections, our institutions, and our candidates are threatened by extremism and violence. Today, Director Cheatle will answer questions about why she deserves to continue to play a critical role in preserving this country's safety and, at the very least, what led to the catastrophic 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania. Again, I do not believe Director Cheatle deserves to maintain her position as head of the Secret Service, but members of the American people will make their own decisions based on her answers today. I urge Director Cheatle to be transparent and forthcoming in her testimony today. Americans deserve no less. We have a duty to find out how this happened and to ensure it never happens again. I now yield to Ranking Member Raskin for his opening statement.
Thank you kindly, Chairman Comer. Elijah Cummings, whose beautiful visage looks down upon us, taught us that the way to find common ground in a crisis is to look for the higher ground. And last week, Chairman Comer and I came together to reach for that higher ground. We made a joint statement condemning the mass shooting and assassination attempt against former President Trump as a grave assault on our democracy. As we wrote, political violence. I join the good chairman in expressing condolences to the family of Corey Comparatori and in sending healing wishes to the wounded victims also of this atrocious act of violence. Some are calling it a miracle that former President Trump escaped this AR-15 attack, unlike so many thousands of our fellow citizens who have been killed or seriously wounded in other AR-15 shootings. Whether this miracle is of divine providence or of an adventitious nature will be up to each of us to ponder, but our job in Congress is not simply to marvel at miracles or count on good luck, but to act as public policy legislators to do whatever we can to prevent future political violence, attempted assassinations, and mass shootings. The chairman and I are thus determined to get to the bottom of the stunning security failures that enabled this 20-year-old lone gunner's AR-15 to perpetrate a mass shooting and assassination attempt at an event protected by the Secret Service as well as state and local police. We'll ask hard questions of Director Cheatle today in order to identify and understand the shocking security failures that occurred and to help transform the operations of the Secret Service to prevent anything like this from happening again. But we can't let ourselves off the hook either, dear colleagues. What happened in Butler, Pennsylvania was a double failure: the failure by the Secret Service to properly protect former President Trump and the failure of Congress to properly protect our people from criminal gun violence. We must therefore also ask hard questions about whether our laws are making it too easy for potential assassins to obtain firearms generally and the AR-15 specifically. Mr. Comparatori, former President Trump, and the other rally attendees wounded in Butler are now members of a club no one wants to belong to, the fallen victim to mass shootings. Last year, we had 655 mass shootings in America, defined as 4 or more people being shot or killed in a single event, not including the shooter. 712 people died and nearly 2,700 people were wounded in these attacks in 2023. Mass shootings are commonplace. They happen at political rallies and constituent meetings, in our elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools, in churches, synagogues, and mosques, in movie theaters and parades, in nightclubs and grocery stores, in concerts, and on street corners. Here are the worst mass shootings in the last 11 or 12 years. The list is a grim reminder of the horrific damage and death wrought by assault weapons and the AR-15 in particular that have taken the lives of our children, parents, colleagues, and neighbors. This is a very partial list. Mass shootings have become that we don't even hear about them anymore. Since the mass shooting in Butler, there have already been at least 10 additional mass shootings in America, 2 of which took place the same day that former President Trump was targeted. One of the mass shootings on that violent Saturday, July 13th, happened at 11 p.m. at a nightclub in Birmingham, Alabama, where 4 people were shot dead and 10 others wounded. This means, amazingly, that the Butler attack was not even the deadliest mass shooting to happen in America on that day. A weapon that can be used to commit a mass shooting at an event under the full protection of the Secret Service, together with dozens of state and local police, is obviously an intolerable threat to the rest of us who do not receive such protection and obviously does not belong in our communities. It's time to pass universal background checks and build on this administration's work to ensure that we permanently close the loopholes in the Brady law for gun show purchases, online purchases, and private sales to prevent those weapons from getting into the hands of people we know to be a threat to others. What happened in Butler shows why even closing these loopholes, however, will not keep assault weapons out of the hands of potential assassins and mass murderers. Under federal law, and in the vast majority of states, even young people not old enough to buy a beer legally can legally purchase and own the AR-15 and carried in public. The shooter in Butler used his father's AR-15. We have to find the courage and resolve to pass a ban on the AR-15 and other assault weapons. A ban has broad support. Even the New York Post loudly endorsed such a ban in 2019. We have passed an assault weapons ban before. Republicans and Democrats together passed it in 1994. Alas, in 2004, we allowed the ban to expire. We know this weapons ban worked. One study found that in the decade that followed the ban's lapse, mass shootings went back up 183%, and deaths from mass shootings went up 239%. But even as we change the Secret Service and act to ban weapons of war like the AR-15, we still will have fallen short of our duty if we fail to denounce every instance of politically motivated violence in whatever form it takes. Republicans and Democrats, again, have come together to denounce this assassination attempt, just as we did the violent attempts on the lives of our colleagues, Representative Stephen Scalise and Representative Gabby Giffords, and on Paul Pelosi, the husband of Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who was attacked and brutalized in his home. And in the immediate aftermath of the January 6th mass violence waged against Congress and the Vice President and the constitutional transfer of power, Democrats and Republicans alike, including Senator McConnell, Chairman Comer, and other colleagues, all denounced this violent assault on our democracy that wounded approximately 140 officers from the U.S. Capitol Police and the Metropolitan Police Department. And I commend them for acting to denounce that attack, just as Democrats moved swiftly to denounce the attack on Congressman Scalise. Political scientists tell us that authoritarian attacks on democratic institutions begin with political parties refusing to disavow or openly embracing political violence. We have to reject that on a strong bipartisan basis, as Chairman Comer and I have done, even as we ensure our Secret Service is up to its vital task of protecting presidents and candidates, and as we work to ensure that America, the streets of our country, are free from the violence of weapons of war. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back to you.
Thank you. Gentleman yields back. Today we are joined by Kimberly Cheatle, who was sworn into office on September 17, 2022 as the Director of the United States Secret Service. Prior to her appointment, Director Cheatle was Senior Director of Global Security at PepsiCo. Before her role at Pepsi, she served 27 years in the Secret Service. Pursuant to Committee Rule 9G, the witness will please stand and raise her right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record show that the witness answered in the affirmative. Thank you. We certainly appreciate you being here today and look forward to your testimony. We normally limit testimony to opening statement to 5 minutes, but take all the time that you need. Obviously, the rules that we will abide by. When you're finished with your statement, we will then turn to questions. Each member will have 5 minutes. And just a note to the members, I'm going to strictly adhere to the 5 minutes. Once 5 minutes is up, I will hit the gavel. If the director is in the process of answering a question, we'll certainly let her finish her answers, and then we will move on. We're going to have about 100% attendance here today, plus a few additional add-ons. So this will be a very lengthy hearing, and we want to make sure every member gets their 5 minutes uninterrupted to be able to ask these important questions in this very bipartisan hearing today. I now recognize Director Cheatle for your opening statement.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Comer, Ranking Member Raskin, and distinguished members of the committee. My name is Kimberly Cheatle, and I am the Director of the United States Secret Service. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today. The assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump on July 13th is the most significant operational failure of the Secret Service in decades, and I am keeping him and his family in my thoughts. I would like to offer my sincerest condolences to the family of Corey Comparator, a former fire chief and a hero who was killed in this senseless shooting. I would also like to acknowledge those who were injured in Butler, David Dutch and James Copenhagen, and I wish them a speedy recovery. I would be remiss if I did not also extend my condolences on the passing of your colleague, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. Ms. Jackson Lee was always engaged in the oversight of the Secret Service, and her passing is a great loss to this body. The Secret Service's solemn mission is to protect our nation's leaders. On July 13th, we failed. As a director of the United States Secret Service, I take full responsibility for any security lapse of our agency. We are fully cooperating with ongoing investigations. We must learn what happened, and I will move heaven and earth to ensure that an incident like July 13th does not happen again. Let me state unequivocally, nothing I have said should be interpreted to place blame for this failure on our federal, state, or local law enforcement partners who supported the Secret Service in Butler. We could not do our job without them. We rely on the relationships built over years of working together to secure events and conduct investigations. Our agents, officers, and support personnel understand that every day we are expected to sacrifice our lives to execute a no-fail mission. As witnessed on July 13th, our special agents shielded former President Trump with their own bodies on stage while shots were being fired. Selflessly willing to make the ultimate sacrifice without hesitation, I am proud beyond words of the actions taken by the former president's detail, the counter-sniper team who neutralized the gunman, and the tactical team who was prepared to act. I will be transparent as possible when I speak with you, understanding, though, at times that I may be limited in providing a thorough response in this open setting due to associated risks with sharing highly sensitive protected methodologies. I do not want to inadvertently provide you today with inaccurate information. Since January 1st, 2024, the Secret Service has successfully secured over 7,500 sites. Every protective advance comes with its own set of challenges and requires a customized mitigation strategy, including specific assets. Security plans are multi-layered, providing 360 degrees of protection. These layers include personnel, technical, and tactical assets, which are a force multiplier for our protective posture. During every advance, we attempt to strike a balance between enabling the protectee to be visible and our protective requirements to be secure. I know this because I have spent 29 years in this agency. I came up through the ranks. I've secured events for every president since President Clinton, supervised on Vice President Cheney's detail, led our training center, oversaw all of the investigations and protective visits in the state of Georgia, supervised on Vice President Biden's detail, and the agency's entire protective mission during the Trump administration. The comprehensive advance process involves collaborative planning between our Secret Service, the protectee's staff, local law enforcement partners, and the level of security provided for the former president increased well before the campaign and has been steadily increasing as threats evolve. The security plan included a full assessment of the Butler Farm showgrounds to identify security vulnerabilities and craft a security plan for the protectee, attendees, and the public. Immediately following the assassination attempt, I directed the activation of my crisis center. I assembled my executive team to begin surging more protective resources to the former president and to ensure the wellness of our people post-incident, all while securing an active crime scene. I immediately ordered a reevaluation of the Republican National Convention security plan, and I increased the security posture in the National Capital Region for all permanent protectees and sites. At the same time, I initiated a mission assurance investigation within our agency. I have instructed my team that all necessary resources will be dedicated to investigating these matters. We will not rest until we have explored every option, and we will leave no stone unturned. But I want to be clear, I am not waiting for these investigations to be completed prior to making changes. Over the past 2 weeks, we successfully led the planning and execution of the 75th NATO Summit and the Republican National Convention. Over the next few months, we will implement security plans for the Democratic National Convention, the United Nations General Assembly, and have already begun planning and coordinating the 2025 inauguration. It is now more important than ever for the men and women of the Secret Service to remain resilient and to focus on what is necessary to carry out our critical mission. Our agency needs to be adequately resourced in order to serve our current mission requirements and anticipate future requirements. The Secret Service currently protects 36 individuals on a daily basis, as well as world leaders who visit the United States, like Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who arrived in Washington, D.C. today. The coming years will bring an unprecedented heavy protection tempo. I have no doubt that the processes that I have implemented during my tenure as director, in addition to my nearly 30 years of experience in this agency, have positioned the Secret Service to be stronger. Our mission is not political. It is literally a matter of life and death, and the tragic events on July 13th remind us of that. I have full confidence in the men and women of the Secret Service. They are worthy of our support in executing our protective mission. I will now answer any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you very much, Director Cheatle. We'll now begin our 5 minutes questions, and I will begin. Just for the record, the Secret Service has an annual budget of around $3.1 billion, and I believe around 8,000 employees. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Obviously, there were many security failures on the day of the attempted assassination and leading up to that day. Let's start with the building that the shooter used to shoot President Trump from. At any point Saturday, did the Secret Service have an agent on top of that roof?
Sir, I'm sure, as you can imagine, that we are just 9 days out from this incident, and there's still an ongoing investigation. And so I want to make sure that any information that we are providing to you is factual.
You can't, okay. Why did the Secret Service not, can you answer why the Secret Service didn't place a single agent on the roof?
We are still looking into the advanced process and the decisions that were made.
Well, okay. Wasn't that building within the perimeter that should be secured? Do we agree with that?
The building was outside of the perimeter on the day of the visit. But again, that is one of the things that during the investigation we want to take a look at and determine whether or not other decisions should have been made.
One of the things that you said, I believe, in an interview, that there wasn't an agent on the roof because it was a sloped roof. Is that normal, and do you fear that that immediately creates an opportunity for future would-be assassins to look for a slanted roof? I mean, this is a huge question that every American has. Why wasn't a Secret Service agent on the roof? And there have been reports that agents were supposed to be on the roof, but it was hot that day and they didn't want to be on the roof. Can you answer any of those questions, Director?
So I appreciate you asking me that question, Chairman. I should have been more clear in my answer when I spoke about where we placed personnel in that interview. What I can tell you is that there was a plan in place to provide overwatch, and we are still looking into responsibilities and who was going to provide overwatch. But the Secret Service in general, not speaking specifically to this incident, when we are providing overwatch, whether that be through counter snipers or other technology, prefer to have sterile rooftops.
Did the Secret Service use any drones for surveillance that day?
So again, I'm not going to get into specifics of that day in itself, but there are times during a security plan that the Secret Service does deploy an asset like a drone.
There were reports that the shooter used a drone just a few hours before the rally start time. Is that accurate?
I have heard those same reports, and again, am waiting for the final report.
Do you know, if you can't answer the question, that's your answer. But can you answer this? Do you know, I'm not asking yes or no, but do you know if the shooter used a drone before the shooting?
That information has been passed to us from the FBI.
How many Secret Service agents were assigned to President Trump on the day of the rally?
Again, I'm not going to get into the specifics of the numbers of personnel that we had there, but we feel that there was a sufficient number of agents assigned.
There are reports that several agents assigned to the rally on July 13th were temporary agents not normally assigned to President Trump. Is that accurate?
What I can tell you is that the agents that were assigned to former President Trump are Secret Service agents that provide close protection to him, and that was what was actual on that day.
How many temporary agents were there that day?
Quite frequently, sir, during campaign events, the Secret Service utilizes agents from HSI or the Department of Homeland Security.
You don't know how many?
Supplement
you can't answer?
our plan.
Have the investigators reconstructed the shooter's precise movements over the past days, weeks, and months?
So, again,
we need to have confidence that if the FBI is leading this investigation, that they're leading a credible investigation, because there's some of us sitting up here today that don't have a lot of confidence in the FBI. So I will repeat the question. Have the investigators reconstructed the shooter's precise moments over the past days, weeks, and months?
I understand your question, Chairman, and I share your concerns about wanting to make sure that we have factual information. The FBI is conducting a criminal investigation. The Secret Service is conducting an internal investigation. There are a number of OIG investigations, and there is the external investigation that the President...
Last question for me. Before July 13th, had the Trump detail requested additional resources?
What I can tell you is that for the event on July 13th, the details that were the assets that were requested for that day were given.
Okay. My time has expired. Chair now recognizes Ranking Member Raskin for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's been reported that before former President Trump got up on the stage at around 6 p.m. on Saturday, July 13th, that the local police had identified and even photographed a man who was acting suspiciously. And this man, who turned out to be the gunman, had been flagged as a potential threat. Is that accurate?
What I can say is that the individual was identified as suspicious.
So he was known to be suspicious before former President Trump took the stage.
That is the information I have received.
Why was he allowed to take the stage with a suspicious person having been identified in the crowd?
So I appreciate the question, and I'd like to make 2 points. If the detail had been passed information that there was a threat, the detail would never have brought the former president out onto stage. That is what we do, and that is who we are. We are charged with protecting all of our protectees.
So you distinguish between someone who is suspicious and someone who's threatening, is that right?
I do. There are a number of times at protective events where suspicious people are identified, and those individuals have to be investigated and determined what is it that identifies that person as suspicious.
So did you deny a request for additional resources that had been made by the Trump campaign?
There were no assets denied for that event in Butler on the 13th.
I see. So you're saying there were requests made for additional assistance for other specific events rather than for the campaign as a whole. Is that right?
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding.
Well, you seem to say that there were not additional resources requested for that event. And forgive me for being unfamiliar with this. Is it requested event by event, or is it requested just in general for the campaign?
So if I can explain the advance process, when an event or a venue is identified by, in this case, campaign staff, then the campaign staff works together with Secret Service agents who go out and conduct an advance. Generally, that is a 5-day time period where those discussions are had about what the perimeter is going to look like, what the size of the event is, what the venue is, and then from there, there is a request made to mitigate potential risk and threat. And I'm saying that on that day, the requests that were pushed forward were granted.
So the Secret Service did not know that the gunman actually had a weapon before President Trump was allowed to get up on the stage?
To the best of our knowledge and the facts that we have at this point, that is correct.
So can you answer this question, which I think is on the mind of most Americans thinking about this? How can a 20-year-old with his father's AR-15 assault weapon climb onto a roof with a direct 150-yard line of sight to the speaker's podium without the Secret Service or local police stopping him?
So again, sir, I will say we are 9 days out from this event, and I would like to know those answers as well, which is why we are going through these investigations to be able to determine that fully. Okay.
It's been reported that the shooter was not carrying a driver's license or any form of identification. They had no idea who he was, but then he was quickly identified, I think within 30 minutes, by using the serial number on the AR-15 under a tracing system that is now controversial. Some people say we should get rid of it. Some people want to keep it. But is that right, that the serial number was the key information which led to the identification of the shooter?
That is my understanding, sir, yes.
Okay. If an American citizen were just to stop you and say, Director Cheatle, we support your work to the tune of billions of dollars and thousands of employees, what went wrong? What would you say?
Again, knowing that we're 9 days out, I would say, as I have said from the very outset, I accept responsibility for this tragedy. We are going to look into how this happened, and we are going to take corrective action to ensure that it never happens again.
Well, I appreciate that, and I hope you will act with vigor and focus and intensity, and it seems you understand the gravity and solemnity of this to the American people. Millions and millions of Americans don't feel safe with all the AR-15s out there. We thought at least the President of the United States or a former President of the United States would be safe, but now that's not even clear. Mr. Chairman, I yield back to you.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the Chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Mr. Jordan from Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director.
And we're going to turn away from that committee hearing where the Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheatle was testifying before the House Oversight Committee regarding the July 13th attempted assassination of presidential nominee Donald Trump. One spectator at the Pennsylvania rally, Corey Comparatore, was killed. Republicans are now calling on the Secret Service Director to resign. She is refusing. Cheatle testified under subpoena that the shooting was the most significant operational failure in recent Secret Service history. On July 13th, we failed, she said, calling her agency apolitical. Spectrum's Aaron Kelly joins me now from Capitol Hill with more. Aaron, do you see anything new emerging from this hearing? It is the first time that we're hearing from the director in depth on this before the TV cameras.
Well, yeah, namely, we're hearing that she's saying, you know, I accept responsibility, that she's going to move heaven and earth to ensure that something like what happened on July 13th doesn't happen again. And all of this is happening, again, as we have all of these events taking place in the middle of campaign season, as we have a change in the Democratic Party on the ticket. And so she's talking about how they've kind of changed the security posture for different events and different locations that the Secret Service is tasked with protecting. But she says, you know, it's 9 days out. So when she was asked specific detail about certain, you know, lapses in that security, which has been called a stunning security failure, you know, she's saying that she takes responsibility, that they want to get to the bottom of what happened. But you can expect that this line of questioning is going to continue in a lengthy hearing, that she is going to continue to be peppered with questions from both sides of the aisle, you know, just wanting to know exactly how something like this happened, how a gunman was able to get on a roof and get into a direct line of sight of the former President of the United States. Josh?
Yeah, Aaron, it seems like she wasn't really answering those questions, you know, that it was under a review. I mean, anyone, you don't need any kind of military or law enforcement background to have major questions about how a shooter got so close on this roof of a nearby building with an assault weapon, with a clear line of sight of the former president. Did you see her really talking in any kind of detail about what went wrong?
Well, she said that the gunman was identified as suspicious, and but that the former president would never be allowed to take the stage if the gunman had been identified as a threat. I think there's going to be continued pushback on that. Just, you know, knowing that there was this time, that there was this person identified of concern, and that person goes on to, you know, being able to get up on a roof with a weapon and take aim at the former president.
One thing very briefly, she was asked, did the Trump campaign ask for more resources? Because that's been reported. What did she say to that?
She said that there were no assets denied for that particular event in Butler on July 13th, but we know that the Secret Service has acknowledged that it had turned back some requests for increased security around the former president in the past. But as far as that event on Saturday, where the former president was shot at, she's saying there were no assets denied there. Okay,
our Aaron Kelly reporting from Capitol Hill. That is it for now. Thank you so much for watching. We're going to continue to monitor the additional questions. I'm Josh Robin. We have more news right now on Spectrum News, including your weather on the One's forecast.